the Spartan assault tank. Welcome, gentle listener, I am Baldermort, your faithful servant, and I wish to introduce you to the factions, forces, and war gear of the Warhammer 30k universe and the Horus Heresy, where the age of knowledge and enlightenment has ended, and the age of darkness has begun. And today, we shall be discussing one of my favourite battle tanks of the Adeptus Astartes, the Legions of Space Marines. Now, I have mentioned this Goliath in my video for Kratos tanks, as it is tied as my favourite of all of the war gear of the Space Marines of the Age of Darkness, which I've been playing quite a bit of recently. A transport and monster par excellence, and rarely missing when my horrid little Iron Warriors take to the field of glory. And for this bold general, there is simply nothing better to scratch multiple itches. It can transport a veritable wrecking ball of my finest elite troops right into the heart of the enemy. It can weather near any storm of fire as it bears down on the front lines or objectives. And it can dish out a veritable avalanche of firepower, or pointed precise las cannon barrages that pop all enemy vehicles that dare to stand before it. Of course, I can only be speaking of the Land Raider Spartan assault tank. Now, you'll have to excuse me not putting in a brief tale today. Unfortunately, all of my energies in that regard are going towards the Friday video, another episode of Thaddeus and Tarquinius. I hope to see you there. And now we get to the hardcore details of this majestic master of the battlefield. The Land Raider Spartan was not found as an STC, or standard template construct. It was actually invented by the Mechanicum of Mars, who later, of course, became the Adeptus Mechanicus. During the Great Crusade, the priests of Mars were as dogmatic about information and technology, but they were not as stiff-necked about the one thing they then stopped doing: invention and modification. The base Land Raider chassis was a piece of equipment designed at the very zenith of the cultural and technical progression of humanity. Yet it was designed to carry humans and those of similar size. Yes, it did indeed carry the enlarged forms of the Space Marines, even in their power armor. Yet, this was all it could do. It could not carry more than a dozen of these men even so. In the battles of the Great Crusade, this was simply not enough. Now, the exact genesis of the Land Raider Spartan is not confirmed. Some say that there was a very specific battle which required ingenuity and alteration to win. Some say that the Spartan was created to carry men across a region covered in plasmatic fires. Despite this assertion, it was definitely from the minds of the Mechanicum of the age. For the Spartan was an enlarged and beefier Land Raider. Its cabin was so expansive that it could take into battle a full squad of tactical dreadnought armor and their leaders. It was designed to carry Terminators into the heart of the battle, right down the throat of their enemy. Its frame was robust indeed, as is any Land Raider's. But this was not all, for it had even more ceramite armor, and it also had a flare shield projector. A rare piece of equipment, a type of force field that protected it from ranged enemy firepower and made it proof from even concerted anti-tank fire, las cannons and their ilk. This chassis also had phenomenal firepower of its own. On either side of its main body were quad las cannon banks, called las cannon arrays. You heard that. 4 las cannons linked together on each side. If it were to face columns of enemy armor, knight equivalents, or even heavy fortifications, it could be tricked out with laser destroyers in place of those las cannon arrays, bringing truly terrifying penetration and potence to the field. Its central body could house heavy flamers or even heavy bolters, or could have las cannons arranged there also. Hence, it could be modified to be anti-infantry, for when the enemies of the Imperium were present in hordes so vast, it would make a high fleet assault look paltry. For make no mistake, the battles of the 41st and 2nd millennium are like unto a picnic compared to the wars fought by the legions. With a machine spirit as strong, if not stronger, than a standard Land Raider, it was a moving base, barracks and delivery system without compare. The ability to take a full squad of cataphractii-eyed Terminators to the most important parts of any battlefield cannot be underestimated. So the Terminators could also act as a defense for the Spartan, just as much as it was for the Terminators. A perfect synergy between marine and armor. It has no equal. The incredible chassis of the Spartan was also the bedrock for some nasty variations indeed. The Typhon and the dreaded Cerberus. But these I shall get to another day. I look forward to it already. Alas, when the Horus heresy destroyed so many forge worlds and technical skill, they became incredibly difficult to produce. Yet this, I feel, was not the main reason that they are no longer built. At least, not in numbers. You see, what people forget is, the Horus heresy kicked off at the very tail end of the Great Crusade. Hence most of the galaxy had already been conquered, and the Xenos threat had been removed with great prejudice. In the age of the Imperium, the nature of war altered quite radically. The Imperium was no longer on the attack. It was placed into a holding position that has lasted until the current day, 10 or more thousand years later. Gone are the enemies that would require an assault from hundreds of Marines and Terminator armor. Gone are the days of the cataphractii, really. The Indomitus pattern Terminator armor, the one most seen and produced in the current era, are most often teleported into combat. And thus, there was simply no longer the need for these massive investments in production and manpower. To lose a squad of 5 Terminators these days would be a travesty. But to lose a full 10, and command staff with them, this would be utterly unacceptable. The legions of Space Marines were the most powerful armies humanity had ever fielded. Yet they were a bludgeon, an army that did not even need a militia or auxilia to win their battles. There were so many Space Marines that they were the main battle line troop. Now, the Marine is a specialist, and, quite definitely, a rarity. They are the scalpel that slices out the command staff of the enemy in decapitation strikes. They no longer walk into battle with thousands of them shoulder to shoulder. They arrive, strike, slay, and then immediately leave. Hence, even from those forge worlds that could still potentially produce the Spartan tanks, there would simply not be the need or the call from chapter masters. For the Spartan now represents too large a resource sink to be risked in any battle of the new era. And they are simply too big a target to risk, especially when one considers that Terminator armor is not for even the battle line Marines anymore. It is reserved for the elite veterans of the First Company, if the chapter has any sets at all. If a Spartan was to carry that sort of force today, a single Xenos weapon or barrage could not just steal the relic and rare armor of the chapter, but also thousands of years of combat experience, all in the one blast. And that is something that the chapters of Space Marines, only 1,000 men strong, cannot ever risk again. And there endeth the lore. Prepare for the gush. Ah, the Spartan! How I adore thee! Let me count the ways. All of them. I love this tank for its lines, its chunky silhouette that simply states, "Stand back, punk! I am a-comin' through!" For there is little that can truly harm a Land Raider Spartan when it is approaching your lines. Oh, there will always be Knights, Titans and super heavy ordnance that can scrap anything whatsoever. But outside of these true Lords of War, there is very little that can stop or even stall the onset of this utter beast of a tank. With the armor of a Land Raider and even more robustness, one would imagine there are many weapons designed to destroy it. Yet this is simply not the case. Not from what I've witnessed in the smog and fog of war, anyway. This is due to the phenomenal flare shield on its front arc. And trust me, you will only ever see the front of my Spartan as I hurl it up the board, or even have it hanging around the back and holding position, containing my beat sticks I can then disembark to counter any charge from loyalist scum. The Spartan's front flare shielding makes it impervious from missile launchers even if they hurl crack at it. The las cannons of other forces mostly bounce off, and even melty action needs to get within the half-range mark to even hope to scratch the paint of my beasties. And trust me, that I do not allow to happen. With my Spartans, I have crushed the Imperial fist, popping their vehicles with my own firepower, and that I enjoyed greatly. It can be kitted out with a plethora of weapons, as we have heard, and that diversity of delivery makes it even more appealing to little old me. I use the las cannons as my bludgeon, terrifying all tanks out of my way whenever I deploy. Hence, if I want my foes to run from a flank or center, then I put my Spartan or Spartans there. With searchlights and a hunter-killer missile, it gets the goods. You can, of course, also put laser destroyers on it if you so choose. Something I will do when I get some more. If the channel does better, of course. You can even give it melty action in the pintle, of course. Why not? It's so expensive already, points-wise. I like to really trick it out so that it draws fire, or is utterly ignored by the enemy, as it is nearly impossible to kill at range. More hilarious still is when I fire back on other tanks, as I play Iron Warriors. Hence, I gave bonuses to blow the smeg out of them. And by Perturabo's metallic bonds, do I pop my opponent's tanks with a smile and song on my lips. And when all is said and done, then I can march out and charge my elite units of Terminators out of this beast, and I waste to everything around them. The Cataphractii Terminators with Power Fists, or even my elite Tyrant Siege Terminators. Those Cataphractii with missile launchers on their shoulders, marching into the foe while unloading a fusillade of marine slaying missiles, then hitting them with those Power Fists yet again. Gorgeous. A Land Raider Spartan assault tank. It's not just for Christmas. Never leave home without it. I have been Baldermort, your faithful servant. If you've enjoyed this video, then do please consider liking and then subscribing, and pressing the notification button, as I would not want you to miss out. And do check out the video description for links to more entertainment options. Of course, myself and Lightbringer, my daughter, also cover mythology. Now, no matter what you do today, do try to make some time for fun. Toodaloo.